correct kavanas and tefillah, at least a minimum that you're oimed lifnei ashchina, you're not yotzim mitzvahs kriya shmona esrei. It's as if you didn't daven. The Rambam says if you don't have an idea, you don't have a focused thought that you're standing in dialogue with God, then it's as if you didn't daven. That probably would diminish the validity of many of our prayers. So one has to start to learn about this to understand how important this is. Let's start from Aleph Beis. So look, so it's Chassidic. I hope you have the sheets, or it was sent on the thing. Shorish mitzvah atfilah, the root of the commandment of prayer. The Shorish mitzvah atfilah, in that idea of mitzvah v'yesh machloka ben aposkim, some machlokes of Rambam and Ramban, imhu mitzvah aseh midaraisa, which is the opinion of the Rambam in Sefer mitzvah aseh hey, that it's a mitzvah deraisa constantly to pray to God, which means to say let's understand what prayer really is. Prayer is outside of the idea that we are praising God, but that's not the idea. The praising is just the akdama. The idea is to express dependence. It's a very un-American experience. As opposed to having a declaration of independence, we have to have a declaration of dependence from God. That's really what this is. And for that, we have to say we're talking to God. Well, what is God to us? And then you're describing your dependence on God. So that's a din d'oraisa on a daily level. Which is das Ramban, that is only midrabanan. That's only midrabanan. The only tefillah which is d'oraisa is the tefillah which we do l'davonenu rav for the last year at least. A shas sorah. When there is a shas sorah, then the tefillah is d'oraisa. It's very interesting to notice that the tefillah deraisa b'shas sorah we learn from the pasuk. Rama brings this also down as far as the deraisa and every day, but definitely b'shas sorah from the pasuk that uskatem b'chatzotzros niskartem with the mitzvah of tkiyah b'chatzotzros b'shas sorah. Now the idea of tkiyah b'chatzotzros b'shas sorah is explained in the Moreh Nevuchim, and also in the Chinuch, which is based heavily on Moreh Nevuchim, that the idea is having focused thought, kavanah, focused thought. And it seems to be that music is a great way of channeling your thoughts to a focused point. And the idea of the shofars is not to blast you up. Obviously, once upon a time, people really got focused through that type of music. It wouldn't work for me today. I'd like something a bit softer. But yes, but that's the idea. The idea is that you need specific, more kavana than regular. You have a very focused thought when you're praying Beis Sorah. I say this because once again, in Or Torah in Bergenfield, there's a sign out there that Aleinu L'Shabach is not Tfilas Haderech. Many times people think that Aleinu L'Shabach, you're about to leave. So over there, Rabbi Sablovsky's shul, about outside on the board, it says Aleinu L'Shabach is not Tfilas Haderech. Lately, I've noticed that the Achenu Kobeis Yisrael, the Tillim said after davening, also looks like Tfilas Haderech. And that's against the whole mitzias of that tefillah Beis Sorah, which is taket tefillah deraisa. Your shachris, according to Ramban, is Rabbana. But you're basically the tefillah Beis Sorah, those kapitlach Tillim, and that specifically saying Achenu Kobeis Yisrael, B'tzorah, B'shivya, etc., that which we're praying today for the Chatufim, that they should somehow come back healthily as much as they're alive, and our soldiers should come back healthy and alive. It is tefillah Beis Sorah Gomer, and that's a special din of kavanah, more kavanah than your davening Shemona Esrei in Ne'ilah. You kvetch around in Ne'ilah, I hate to say it, this is the tefillah deraisa. There's a din, not just a tefillah, but specifically of kavanah midaraisa. It's not an added factor. The kavanah by tefillah Beis Sorah is part and parcel of the guf tzuras mitzvah. That's the whole din of the chatzotzros. I say this because it hurts to see that I go to shul and they rattle it off almost as if they're saying, Aleinu L'Shabach, and they're on their way out. So one has to understand, if there's any prayer you can take seriously during the day, it has to be Achenu Kobeis Yisrael. I don't be such pushy, but this is the truth. This is the tefillah deraisa. And if you can say it 3 times a day, with kavanah. So she says before, so basically the halacha is Rav Mani mitzvahs come on smak, which is a mitzvah say yud base of the smak, and tashbitz in the Zohar Rakia to book a million mitzvahs of the tashbitz. It's called Zohar Rakia. B'chein das Ramban b'chinuch shom halu the tefillah b'chol yom v'hanusach tefillah mitzvah d'Rabbanan. B'chlal davening every day is d'Rabbanan. Obviously, everyone agrees that the nusach tefillah is d'Rabbanan. Ach midiraisa, when is it a biblical commandment? Mitzvah sheyitpalel adam. When he should request and beseech, when in those unique times, when he really needs something, that's what we're talking about. When you're really in dire straits, that's you call it either a private Sorah or a public Sorah. There's the Allah of Tefillah Deraisa. Azi mitzvah to say Deraisa, shetzivuna shemibarach bazet, shirika kirake sha'adam zemi menu levad. The idea of Levad means say we don't ask anybody else. We at the end of the day we raise our eyes up to God. Now, if you really want to know, if you learn this inside in the Rishonim, you see there's more than that. When he says Levad, it doesn't just mean to God and not to Jesus or whoever it only be. It means Levad and not to Malachim and not to anything like that. That's why the Ramban says Mefurish in his Drasha Turs Hashem Tamima. That it is that saying Machnise Rachmi Machnise Rachamenu, he sees that as Avodah Zarah, because you're supposed to ask from Kodesh Baruch Hu Levad, not ask from Malachim. You also write over there the Rishonim write on the Slicha that people say in the Ila Midas Harachmim, his Galgali Lifnei Konech. He says that's a question of Avodah Zarah. You're not davening to Midas Harachmim. There's some Chassidic brings it a bit later. Midas Harachmim is a midah of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's like praying to a hammer. Hammer, please knock well the nail. You have to ask a Kadosh Baruch Hu which uses that midah. To daven the Midas Harachmim is also Avodah Zarah. These are things that we have to be very careful about. He discussed it further down in one of the prakim coming that should be modified. If to tell us the Balei Tefillah, I know I'm very makbid on this. And Machnise Rachim, I don't even sing it. But same thing with Midas Rachim is Galgal Lifnei Koinach. What are you talking to a Midah? So he says over here, that's what it means Levad. Shashem is Baruch Levadoi Hamanig Ayulama. He's alone. He's the lone soldier. There's nothing else. Everything else are Midos and Hagas. Hamanig Ayulama Umashgiach. He actually notices and sees everything that happens in his bria. To what extent is he also involved in that once that he notices? That's already a machlekes rishonim, as we know. The Ramban believes that in Russia is nitan lemikra. Ramban believes that unless you're a tzaddik gomer, there's a lot of mikra in the world. Hypothetically, things can happen to you under haphazard realities. Got stuck in a traffic jam because you left too late and you didn't listen to the traffic news. Okay, that's lav dafka schar. It could be sachar, it could be einish, it could be mikra. If you're a very holy person, which is David Kadosh Baruch Hu, he saves you from mikra. That's what David HaMelech calls the Chassidic. Okay, that a Chassid doesn't see Ra, I agree. And a real tzaddik doesn't see Ra, so we now understand the criteria of Chassid and tzaddik is a person which is Davek Kadosh Baruch Hu, lives with an intense God awareness 24/7. So basically, he says he's mashgiach b'chol pratit b'yaisa. B'chilo levada hayachelis lo'yishir. The only one that can help you at the end is God. Now, this is something which is also very important to understand. Why is it that when we say Hallel, we praise God, all of a sudden we have there two lines of Ana Hashem Ha'ishiana and Ana Hashem Hatzlichana. Here you are doing nothing more than giving him, praise, and all of a sudden you're requesting in the middle. What is that line? Doesn't add up. And the answer is, as the Rishonim write, because that is the ultimate praise, when you're saying there's no one else that can save me but you, there's no one else that can give me success but you. You're saying I'm depending totally on you because there's no one else that can. And this is implied in this last sentence over here. It's a quotation of the Rambam actually. It is only God which can do Hoshia. So when you say Hashem Hoshia, have that in mind during Halo. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to say and this is what he writes. K'moshe katav Rambam Pirush Mishnah. The Rambam writes in the Akdama of Pirush Mishnah to Perik Chelik, the 10th Perik of Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin b'Mishnah's Kol Yisrael Yesh Lem Chelik L'Olam Haba. There he brings, that is the source of the 13 principles of faith that the Rambam formulated, the Yud Gimel, he calls Ikrim. We know that multiples of Rishonim argued with him as what is called an Ikr, what is not. There's a whole book called Sefer Ikrim by Yosef Elbo, which contests the whole idea of having Ikrim or 13 Ikrim. We're not going into that at the moment, but the Rambam did formulate 13 Ikrim. By the way, I'd just like to add that some people have this custom of saying the Ani Mamin at the end of davening. Well, one analyzes, I don't know who wrote the Ani Mamin, but one analyzes the language of the Ani Mamin and compares it to the primary source, which is that Rambam in Pirush HaMishnah Chelik. He sees whoever wrote this list of Ani Mamin was, let's just mildly say, inaccurate. And I do suggest once to just go through the 13 principles of faith found in Akdama the Rambam and Pirush Chelik, and then paralleling it to your Ani Mamin. There are things there which are not written in Rambam. There are things in Rambam which he omits. It's a Sefer Sheina Mugal. I'm going to be very blunt and say I think that someone should redo it. Anyway, so going back here, so he writes in Perek Chamishim Yud Gimel Ikrim. That's what he writes. He writes that we trust we do only God, and there's no one else but God, and we don't have malachim, we don't have srafim, we don't look at anything else, only at God Himself. We don't pray to a rebbe that a rebbe should talk to God. We don't do things like that. We don't pray to dead people that they should intercede with us for God. We don't do that either. What's the pshat of going and praying by a caver? That's a Ran in the drushes. I once taught you. The Ran says in his drushes, when you go to a caver, it's very common for Americans in New York. They go to Queens. They go to a caver of Lubavitch Rebbe. Okay, today is Hey Tavis. It's a big holiday in Lubavitch. Okay, so what do they go there for? You're not supposed to ask him to do anything. You connect to God, which was somehow expressed in the life of this person. That chelik of Kvod Shamayim, Gila of Kvod Shamayim, which was expressed in the life of this person. Let's say I go to, I don't really go too much, but if I go to Kever Rachel, is the God expressed in the life of Rachel, which I want to connect to that God. And the best place to connect to that God is the resting place of a person, which was a vehicle of that Kedushas of Kadosh Baruch Hu. So I'm not praying to Rachel Imenu. I never asked her anything. She's a dead lady. Okay, the only one says he didn't die is Yaakov Avinu. I don't know about anybody else. They dead. LMI. You pray to God, which was expressed in the life of this lady. Yeah, that I understand. She has a very unique personality and a very unique covered Shemayim aspect of Kedusha, which was expressed through her life. And something, before you go to these places, start studying the biblical characters and understanding the unique identity of what aspect of Kavod Shemayim did they express. Like there are different types of people, and it's fascinating to study this. And then I want to connect to that God. I know these people go on these Polish tours to the Rebbe B'Lamaylach, and I said, for goodness sakes, have to be my wife's great grandfather. I says, what are you going there for? What do you know about the God? Nothing. There's a song, Adarabba. That's what they do. They sing there. I mean, what are you wasting your time? I was just in Tveria on Shabbos, so they asked me if I wanted to go to the cave of the Rambam. So I said, the Rambam's not dead. I learn him every day. He's very much alive in my mind. Why would I want to go there to meet him? You know what I mean? I want to connect to God. I want to connect to God through His Torah. I'm trying to say, before you do anything, you have to know what is the Kavod Shemayim that you want to connect to. Why are you going to Rachel if you got nothing to do with it? You're not interested in her life. Important Nakuda. So the crowds, we don't pray, we don't ask anybody any interceding. There's this breast of a nusach over there that they for davening. According to the Ramban, that's Avodah Zorah. Open up your drasha Teres Hashem Tmima and you can see it. They say Hini Bikashus Atzmi Chveiswas Nachman Ben Fega. You don't connect to no Shadchanim. God doesn't want middlemen. God wants you to talk to Him Himself only. As a litzvah. Val Pizeh. And according to this, Pashutu, it's very simple. The mitzvah of tefillah therefore has nothing to do with being a holy person or a righteous person, which is close to God. The mitzvah is to express total dependency, understanding the source of all is only God. That's the mitzvah. The mitzvah is not, you don't pray in order to get things. You pray, the necessities is a way, is a medium through which now you can express your dependency. So don't ask me you didn't get an answer. That's not the question. Prayer is not for an answer. Prayer is to express dependency in the time that you really feel you need something. So he says, sometimes your prayer will be answered positively, sometimes it will not be answered. This is similar to a request. Person sends in a request to a melech basavadam, to a human king. Everybody can put in a request, even the lowest serf. It could be that he will fulfill it. Why so? So he says, Kimiteva hatov v'chesed shel hamelech lishmoa daikel hashvelim. It is true that if he is a gracious king, he has a certain affinity to those people of lower station. Usually, Adrab, he's not that cozy with the people that are too close to him without going into politics. He enjoys the simple people. So basically, the teva of any righteous king would be to help the common folk. Well, Adrab, so the lower you are, the better you. That's what the more dire straits you're in, the more you're really honestly expressing dependency. That's what you're going to get. That's a chinuch. The chinuch writes this in Parshas Ekev. The mitzvahs that say a birkas hamazon. So he says, how do you become a kli? How do you become a vessel to receive the grace of God? By totally realizing that it's all up to Him. That what makes you a kli. You want a total sense. Hey, I'm at the end of I'm at the cliff's edge. There ain't nowhere to go. Okay, it's you or not. Okay. That makes you a kli. Then God talks to you because you're a shofel. The lower you are, in dire straits you are, then your tefillah actually is something which has a much greater success story of it's going to be fulfilled. And that's what he says, because teva achesed toiv achesed shel hamelech lishma davke el hashvelim. Ein liyachas osel ina iskar b'zaricha klal. Don't think that the fact that tefillos will be fulfilled because you're closer to God, because you live more in frumkeit or you live more. No. The question is you're a shofel. You really need it. That makes you a bigger kli. Could be chiddush here. Ein liyachas eliyina iskar b'saricha klal. Ki im b'vakosha klolius b'davar gadol. Yes, when it comes to bakasha klolis for Klal Yisrael, etc. So you go to the person which is shaykh to more of Klal Yisrael, less to the Prati Yisrael. So you go to the big Talmud Chacham, you go to the Tzaddik, etc. But when you're talking about bakasha pratis, you don't go to the Rebbes, you don't go to Reb Chaim Kanevsky. You open up a Gemara and you learn a Tosfos, and Abaye will bless you. God wants you to talk to Him. He doesn't want you to talk to middlemen. When we have Soros and Klal Yisrael, like we in Eretz Yisrael, living in Eretz Yisrael, so we had Chanami, then we need people which are somehow closer. What does that mean, closer? So Rav Blachman has a whole, when he said a eulogy on Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, explained by Chava, that a person which has more time, since a Raisa could shabricha v'shchinte chadlu, the name Chachman v'Kadosh Baruch Hu, which is essentially himself, as found in Rambam, we learned this multitudes of times, that hu ha'deya v'hu ha'mada v'hu ha'yediyah, that the Chachman of Kadosh Baruch Hu is an expression of the essential self, as opposed to an accumulation of experiences which he processed. That expression of self was expressed in different ways. A, in Chachmas HaTorah. B, in creating different neshamas. Each neshama is an expression of Chachma B'Kadosh Baruch Hu, which is also expressed in a certain mitzvah. We discussed this not that long ago. So he basically said the person who has a lot of Torah, that means there's more Rabbim in him than he's not just one person. He has within his persona embodied more tzibur than a yachid, because he has more chachmas HaTorah, so he has a lot of Torah, he has a tzibur of Torah in there. He's parallel to a lot of people. That's what he says. So pshat is a tefillas chacham, it's like a tefillas rabbin. That's what Rav Blachman wrote over there in his Maimer, in his eulogy on Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. So this is what we said when we're talking about the tefillas HaTzibur. So just as there's halacha that tefillas HaTzibur is not nena reikav, A tefillah is vivakesh, it's a chacham, vivakesh alav, because eino chinami, that is called a tefillah atzibur. The tefillah of there's more Torah there, there's more kedushas Yisrael in this person than in another person. Okay? Masha'en came, when we talk about pratim, as far as pratim is concerned, everyone can go on his own. Adrabah, the more shuffle you are, the more the odds are that you'll get a better answer. Zok there, Kamoi Kain Hu Yisbach being Tfilah Shemispalm Elav Mavaksh Mimenu Shomet Tfilas Kol Peh. It's a very important thing to know. First, Yisoid number one, we learned two things. First of all, mitzvah tefillah, according to the Rambam, is a mitzvah deraisa. The nusach is the Rabbanan. According to the Ramban and Roiva Paiskim, no, that's the Rabbanan. The only tefillah deraisa is Beis Surah. We pointed out that then there's a specific halacha of kavanah more than any other tefillah. We've also pointed out the getter of tefillah is what? Is to express total dependency on God and only God, with nothing, no middlemen or anything in it. And this doesn't depend on how you're close to God, because sometimes the lower you are, you really need it. You pray out of a broken heart. That is the mice that makes you the biggest kli for receiving the shefa. This is based on the chinuch and mitzvahs of Achalta v'Savota v'Rachtas Hashem Elokecha in Parshas Eikev. Let's go to Sif base. Let's try to understand a bit this idea of tefillah. So first he's going to use a certain Kabbalistic terminology. If you don't mind, I'm going to skip it at the moment. I'll go back to it later. And I'm going to go, I'll read it. What are you going to do? I'll do it anyway. You do a Priyat Chaim. Those who learn the book of Reb Chaim Vital, the Kisvei Ha'ari, know that in Priyat Chaim it says the hefesh ben Kriyat Shema l'tefillah. What's the difference between Kriyat Shema? Is a din of smichas gul l'tefillah. We put Kriyat Shema next to tefillah. That's a Gemara in Brachas. Daf Tesvav Araisa lekabel olav oil malchus shemayim shleima. It says Yifane, you first have to empty out your body, and neach tefillin, you put on tefillin. Yikra Kriyat Shema b'yispalel, you do Kriyat. It means both Kriyat Shema and tefillah. And Shemona Esrei. If you just did Kriyat Shema without Shemona Esrei, that's not Kabbalah's Ol Malchus Shemayim Shleima. Now, with what we just learned in a few sentences ago, we understand that, because Kabbalah's Oil Malchus Shemayim has to include the practical realities of every day, not just in theory that I love God, I will die for God. No, practically speaking, everything depends on God, which is what Shemona Esrei is. So it says over there that the idea of Kriyat Shema is Shahidei Kriyat Shema Nasi Yuchud Abba Ve'ema. This means to say Chachma and Bina, and I will explain myself. God basically interacts with us in a certain flow chart, shall we say, of how we act. First, he perceives things, understands things, and ultimately, therefore, interacts. Just as you see something, you perceive it, you understand it, and therefore now, afterwards, you have a certain emotional reaction to it. You smile, you laugh, you cry, you scowl, I don't know what you do, and then finally you give, or you don't give, whatever you do. And notice first there's an idea of seichel, and then finally the midos are a reaction. That's what midos are. They are a reaction to your perception of reality. There's no such thing as objective reality for the subjective man. You react according to what you perceive is there's no bad midah. It's a bad perception. Yeah, your midos means measured. They're a measured reaction to your perception. So when the people tell you have bad midos, they don't know what you're talking about. You have correct midos. Your measured reaction is measured to your perception. You have bad perceptions. Yeah. Fix your head. Don't fix your heart. You have to fix your head. You fix your head. You see things correctly, then you'll react correctly. The problem is you think you're God's gift to humanity, so you react in a haughty way. You're judgmental about somebody and you have decided he's on the downside. You're going to react in a certain way, but you're not supposed to see things that way. There are other ways of seeing things. So this is the cloud that we talk about. So where's the source of midos? What's the Abba and the Ima of midos? What is the source of the midos? Well, primarily, first of all, is cognizance. You're aware of something. Then after you have cognizance, you comprehend what you're seeing. Chachma is called cognizance. And Ima is called Bina, which is understanding. Lavin davar mitoch davar. You comprehend. But once if you're not cognizant of something, you won't react to it. If you don't understand what you're seeing, you won't react to it. Once you understand it, you see, you're cognizant of it, and you understand of it, and it becomes something vivid and real in front of your face, you will react to it. So that's what it says, Yichud Abba Be'ima, which is putting together Chachma and Bina of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What you're doing is aligning your mind, your cognizance, and your understanding with that of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is what you're doing. If you look carefully in Shema Yisrael, what's the idea of Shema Yisrael? Kabbalah Yisrael Malchus Shamayim. Basically, I'm aware that there's God, Anochi Havaya Elokecha, which is literally what the Ramban says in Parshas Yisrael, that Anochi Havaya Elokecha, that is the mitzvah of Kabbalah's oil Malchus Shamayim. What does that mean? As we look in the past, Havaya Hovek Kadmon Shemimenu Hakol B'Chefso B'Yecholto, according to the Ramban in Parshas Yisrael. Elokecha, and I am your Lord, and therefore, naturally, if this is totally understood, you will then obviously love me, etc. But that is all. So first of all, there's Seichel, there's Chachma and Bina, which is the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei Elokecha, that's the Shema Yisrael, that's the Kabbalah so Malchus Shamayim. Afterwards, there's Kabbalah's mitzvahs. What's that? Now, once I perceive that you're Elokai, you're my Lord, therefore I will follow your rules, okay? But it starts with basically the Chachma and Bina of understanding this. So he said this is the Yichud of Chachma and Bina. And then afterwards, I did Tefillah, when you're davening Shemona Esrei and you're expressing basically the support, this is Yichud Zacher ben Akeva. What does that mean? I will explain that too. Well, if we have the idea that Abba Ve'ima was primary source, cognizance is the kernel of awareness, ultimately internalized in an idea of you can actually grasp it and understand it. That is, so to speak, the womb. That's called the Nekeva. That's called Ima. So Abba Ve'ima are Chachma and Bina. When we talk about the midos interactive, there are interactive midos which are perceived as male and others female. I think I once taught this in the past. We talk about male, we talk about creative, expressive. We talk about female, we're talking about something which is made more applicable and somehow more, just as Bina, understanding is something which puts Gedorim, puts boundaries to a walk, flow of cognizance. You then you say, what are the parameters of this thing? Where does it begin? Where does it end? That's how you understand something. What's it? Hagdoros, as we say. What's its boundaries? You know, the others you don't understand what you're talking about. You just use a cliche. So obviously the same thing applies also in your midos. For example, chesed. Chesed means to say, as we said today in davening, L'cho Hashem ha'gedula v'ha'gvur v'ha'tiferes v'ha'netza v'ha'hoy kichol b'shamayim v'ha'orz L'cho Hashem ha'mamlocha. Those are your 7 midos elyonos. Ha'gedula means extensive behavior, what we call chesed. Chesed means extensive behavior, believe bull. This is Blachman in the Nevuchim in the last chapter, where he writes chesed doesn't just mean good grace. Chesed means extensive behavior without limit. Now, usually it means good behavior, but it also can mean incest. It's also expression of self without limitations, walking away from limitations which are appropriate, also called chesed. So next time you say you have a chesed project, I suggest you explain what type of chesed you're talking about. Okay? So I know I have this granddaughter, but she says she wants to come help my wife on Tuesday because they have a chesed program. So I says, what do you mean by chesed program? And so I had to explain. I opened up the Morning book and explained it to her. You have to do this extensively, free, without limitations, not because your teacher taught it to you, but that's not chesed. Okay, you have to be limitless in giving to your grandmother. I don't mind that at all. Anyway, she's a good kid, so she'll probably do it. So that's chesed. So chesed is totally extensive behavior, powerful extensiveness. This is embodied in what you call Avram Avinu, the jitterbug running around doing cure for everything that moves, like Menachem, what you have to do in Los Angeles, hopefully one day. Okay. And then we have Gvura. What's Gvura? The opposite. You actually write the opposite of extensive expressive behavior. It's actually enclosed, restrictive. Gibor HaKoveshit Yitzro, embodied in Yitzchak Avinu, which is actually some of the secludes. We don't see him making major differences, as I once mentioned in the Shir. He didn't even get his name changed. He was born in Yitzchak, state of Yitzchak. His father got a name change. His son got a name change as Geblibna Yitzchak. Okay, This is Gevura. So the same things you have, that's called Nekeva. Nekeva means taking something, a free flow of energy, and giving it boundaries and form. That's why she's also, in the Nekeva is also about Bina, you say, because Bina is also in the Nekeva. Then you have Chesed word Tiferes. Tiferes is the Sego. There's like dot on the right side, dot on the left side. Tiferes is in the middle. That's the merging of those two elements. The harmonious merging of those two extremes is what we expect people to have. Not just to be an extrovert, not just to be an introvert, but to know how to harmoniously merge those two aspects of your personality. That's how we can start making your life. Then you have Netzach. Netzach is once again someone expressing himself. It's once again Zachar, expressing himself overwhelmingly. That's what Nitzachon is, overwhelming. And what does that do? It makes other people smaller. That's what Nitzachon is. Natseach, okay? We're arguing, we're debating. If you listen to a debate, it's purely Nitzuach. Everyone, A, is trying to overwhelm B with his arguments. What are you doing? Expressing yourself externally, like an act of chesed. But what are you really doing? You're making somebody small. So it's a chesed shiyotzeh gvura, that's called Netzach. What is Hoid? The exact opposite. What is Hoid? Hoid is basically acquiescing. You're admitting that you depend on something else. That's why it's so hard to say thank you. Because what are you doing when you say thank you? You're admitting dependency. Little kids, you tell them, say thank you. But it's not that simple. Of course, the type is a big avodah. To be say thankful means you know that you're actually dependent on someone else. That's called Hoid. That's the whole idea of Hanukkah. It's supposed to be Thanksgiving. Okay, Thanksgiving, that's what this was. Okay, the holiday of Thanksgiving is what? Is making yourself smaller and thus enlarging your source. As I heard from Rav Blachman once, that a good teacher has to know the Chochmah of Hoid. He has to know how to shrink sometimes to allow the student to stand in the center of the stage. Because if he just constantly on the center of the stage, that kid will have no feet and no hands, will have no independence. So Hoid is a very important meter for parents and for teachers. So this is Netzach and Hoid once again. So one is Zachar. The Zachar is the extensive Nitzachon going out there. And the Hoid is constricting yourself, allowing other things to happen, other people to be. That's your Hoid. So that's a Maisa Gvura, which creates a Metzias of Chesed. As opposed to Netzach, which is a Maisa of Chesed, giving forward, which creates a Metzias of Gvura of somebody feeling smaller. And then you have Netzach, and then you have your Yesod. So Yesod is already the capability of taking all that flowchart of thoughts and feelings and translating it into something practical. Many people with strokes have this problem that their minds work well in the field. Well, they have the capability of translating that into speech or bodily movement. I saw the tragic figure of Lubavitcher Rebbe in his last years. That's what it looked like. He was very frustrated. He couldn't express. He didn't have the tools of expression. His mouth worked, everything worked. What didn't work was the translation of all that into a reaction. Felt the Yesod capability. Many people are very cerebral, but they lack the talent of translating feelings into reality. Now, you don't just have to be stroke people for that. No, but there's a lot of people which, for whatever reason it is, and a lot has to do with terrible parents and teachers, which are never empowered to express their feelings. Midas HaYesod is taking all that float inside, making a foundation for the next stage of realization. They're churning up with feelings, but they don't have it within them. Okay, so say something. Do something. Feel. Never felt Midas HaYesod. And afterwards, Malchus is, once you have that Midas HaYesod, all that floats down, what is Malchus? The realization of all that. So what is Malchus really? Nothing more than the realization of all that flow chart of midos, of comprehensions, of cognizance, comprehension, ultimately reaction through that whole different set of interactive possibilities. We're usually an interesting merge of multiple things. There's not just one. We're a very colorful animal. That's what Tiferes is. We are a mixture of feelings. Sometimes it's harmonious. Sometimes it's a kaleidoscope, which is very blaring and shocking. That's another psychological issue. So that's what's called Zocher v'Nekeva. Zacha nekeva means to say start from midas chesed, which is zacha, to the ultimate nekeva, which is malchus. Malchus is nothing more than a receptacle of all that translated into reality. The activator of malchus is yesod. Okay, as we pointed out, then malchus is the realization. What is it? So malchus lesle migarmei klum. Malchus has nothing of itself. It's just the capability. Okay, now I have the emotional, cerebral, psychological capability of translating. Now I need a tool. I need a mouth. I need an ear. I need an eye. That's malchus, the tools of realization. That is not the activator. That's nothing more than the kli achitzon. That's the ultimate, what we would call nekeva, the capability of realization of other energies. So there you have it. That's yichud zachar v'nekeva. Zun, it's called. Means going from chesed, which is zachar, the first midah, down to the ultimate nekeva, which is the kli, which is malchus. I think that's now is clear. Otherwise, this sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Olefi sheyichud the abba ve'ema hu nala yoser. Obviously, the idea first of developing cognizance and awareness of God is obviously ultimately more important. Lachein mitzvah kriya shema gdola yoser. So obviously, mitzvah kriya shema is more important. Achafilu misha terasa imnasai even Rashbi. Shirim ba'yichai who's terasa imnasai. So well, today it's used in the totally misconstrued. Terasa imnasai. The Gemara says it's only Reb Shimon bar Yochai and his son Eliezer. Everybody else, Reb Yochanan, Reb Sheva, Reb Yeshua, all the good, they were not terasum imnasai. They would go to the army. They worked. Okay, the only ones terasum imnasai the Gemara says is Reb Shimon bar Yochai and Reb Eliezer B'nai, because they were living in a cave, as Dr. Lam Zucher said, they were cavemen, and they were basically living off God's tree gifts. Okay, so this is no. He described it. Remember, Dr. Lam once had a shir in the yeshiva on the yard side on Reb Zulchan's yard. So we discussed this, the idea of it takes time for him to even go out in the street. Shimon bar Yochai went out of his cave. He was angry at the world. He couldn't perceive why people cared about Narishkeit, and they told him, go back into your cave, brother. You're dangerous. You have to get used. You need a halfway house. I remember that was a long speech over there in the Beis Medrash. So this is what's happening here. So he says that even a person which is terasum nasi chayiv b'kriyas shema, afal pi shepater min hatefila. Shimon bar Yochai and Reb Eliezer B'nai were pater min hatefila, but they're chayiv in kriyas shema. They're chayiv in kriyas shema because before anything you have to be cognizant of God. Limud HaTorah from day to night without a hakdama that there's a God in the world and this is Chachmasi work is not Torah. So obviously even terasum nasa you need the constant idea of Kabbalah Soy Malchus Shamayim, which is Yichud Abba Ve'ema. Amnam Mikol Makom. It is true that the idea of tefillah, of taking all that and say, thus I need health, wealth, the pursuit of happiness, which is tefillah, that's what it is. Yesh Mali Yisrael B'tefillah, Shiba Amida, because you're standing, Shiba Amida, you're standing. Why do we stand by Kriyas Shema, by Shemona Esrei, and we don't have to stand by Kriyas Shema, we pass through halacha. We don't have to stand by Kriyas Shema, we pass through, if you're standing, you stand. If you're sitting, ki yadur the machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. But we don't get up specifically for it. We use that about Tzilas Mamish. Because you know why you're standing? Because you're standing up in front of God. You're encountering God in the basic sense of emanation. Here I must explain something. It's a Gemara. The Gemara said there's 2 days of how we're supposed to stand in Kriyat Shema, in Shemona Esrei. One day is we put 2 feet together. So to speak, to say we only have 1 foot. Like the Malachim, they stand on 1 foot, Ragleim, regular Yeshora. Their foot is not for movement at all. Their foot is at the most only for stature, for standing. They don't move. They're called oimdim. They stand in one place. They don't grow. Okay? So Pshat is Ragleim, Ragli Yeshua. When you stand in front of God, the Shemona Esrei, you actually are supposed to feel originally. Now, this is an interesting thing to see. There are different sections in Shemona Esrei which are different meditations. This is found later in this Maimer. I'm not going to pour everything in the second paragraph. But the original encounter with God, you're supposed to have total annihilation of self, and you see yourself nothing more than an emanation of God. Therefore, you're not discussing any tzrachim apratim, you're describing God and nothing more. Big shaila between the Mekubalim, whether we should say Zechreinu L'chaim, etc., even during Shemona Esrei. Not Pashit. If you notice, there are nuschos, which we don't say it together with the Chazan, that's the Nusach I David. When I do Bilachash is my business, whatever it be, it's a Nishkin Davar Pashit, to say the least, okay? Because you're Omer B'Atzilus. Omer B'Atzilus means there's no sense of self. I see myself as nothing more than an emanation of the oneness of God. The total annihilation of self, that's the way you're supposed to feel when you stand in front of him and you say, Hashem, Sfasai Tiftach. Now you can open my mouth at the moment I'm frozen. Then my mouth will say, to say my brain is unfrozen. But my mouth will say your prayers, your praises. You realize what you're saying here. You're saying, I'm flabbergasted. What am I doing here? You know what I mean? That's what you're saying when you open up your Shemona Esrei. Hashem Sfatai Tiftach. You open it up. I'm frozen. Then my mouth will declare your praises. Think of it. So this is what it says here. You're in Atzilus. That's why you stand. Because the idea is either you have 1 foot because you're like a malach. A malach realizes he has no yesh. He's only a shliach. He's only a hammer and a chisel of God. He has no identity of himself. You know that in Rashi and Parshas Vayishlach. When Yaakov asked the angel, "What's your name?" She says, "Don't ask. It changes. Read Rashi. It depends what my job is. When I have to do X, I'm called X. When I have to do Y, I'm called Y. It's like me. Now I'm a teacher. At home, I'm a husband. Shabbos, I'm with my grandchildren. I'm Zaidi. So what's my name? My name depends on my job. Okay, a malach has no other identity except for his job. That's what he is. He has no yesh. His yesh is nothing more than his job. That's all it is. That's called Batzilus. That's why we're supposed to stand like a malach. Ain't going anywhere. Okay, there's another day in the Amiroim, actually no Tanoim, that you're supposed to stand 1 foot on top in front of the other. What does that mean? So the Maral explains in the Chedusha Agoras of Brachas, he says, listen, to say that I'm going to stand totally with no movement is almost an superhuman feat. Feet, F-E-A-T, excuse me, right? It means that you're not F-E-E-T, right? Superhuman feat. Can you really stand in front of God and say, I ain't going anywhere because I'm implanted here because I'm nothing more than a pure emanation? I mean, you have to be Maber Ravashi to do a thing like that. How can a human being say that? So he said the other way, we don't pass in that way, is we put 1 foot in front of the other saying, yeah, what the 1 foot is in front of the other means the foot is also for movement, but very slowly. You're not going too fast. That's more like it. That's more what so although I put my feet together because that's the din, but in my mind, I have 1 foot in front of the other because I know the emes. I'm going. Believe me, I'm going. But it's going to be, hopefully, every time I'm Shemona Esrei, I go a little slower. My Avera Guerrero's Avera train doesn't move that fast anymore. And that's the pshat in the feet, standing like Batzilus. That's the idea of tefillah. Beginning of tefillah definitely is Batzilus. It's definitely the Shleisha Brachas Rishonos. I didn't supposed to be all the brachas, but at least Shleisha Brachas Rishonos. And that's how you're supposed to look at Shemona Esrei. What about Kriyas Shema? Adrab is be yeshiva. Mashenkin Kriyas Shema u'miyushiv. Why? The Fishi Adayim Bebriya. You haven't gone up to that stage of total annulment. You're still seeing yourself as a creature, but a creature of God. I'm going to explain this, okay? This also goes back to something that he says much further on. I don't know if we'll ever get there. He describes what's happening in the process of davening, starting from Sukkot to Zimra, ending up with Shemona Esrei. And he says, what does the person do? Well, first and foremost, if you want to encounter God, you have to look at him, the best friend of religion is the natural sciences. That's the best friend of religion. Look at Rambam. Rambam writes in Yesod HaTorah, Perek Beis, Kate said, what is the avenue towards attaining love of God? Bishashi is Bainin Adam where man will contemplate b'ma'asavu b'rava niflaim. He will look at God's actions and his beautiful creations, that the Eshem Chochma she'ein lam erech v'lo kates, and he sees the enormous wisdom found in chemistry, biology, etc., anatomy, you name it, zoology, botanics, you name it, whatever it only be. And he sees Chochmasei she'ein erech v'lo kates miyad u'oev mishabeach mufa'er u'mitaveh tava gdola leidat Hashem hagadol. This is Rambam Perek Beis Yisoid Perek Beis Yisoid Torah Halacha Beis. So maybe we understand that science is the best friend of religion. That's the truth. If they really teach that way, we probably have a more balanced society. So we understand the first thing is Psukkah Zimmer is exactly that. If you look at Psukkah Zimmer, it's celebrating God of the world of creation. Read your Hallelujahs, Mashlich Kachok Kepitim, Thinker, Atel Miya Amod. That's how you're supposed to feel when you think of snow. Okay, and so on and so forth. Taninim v'chol talmod, eshavar, and shil v'kitur. Start thinking about hail, about fire, about Moby Dick. You know what I mean? Think about the Taninim. Think about all the beautiful creatures of the world. And you look at God, you see His Chachma she'en le'ech v'ketz. That's Psukkah Zimra. Finally, you moved on after Psukkah Zimra. You did with the natural world. That's why it's called Halal B'chol Yom. The Gemara says, "Yi chelki im gamri Halal B'chol Yom." So the Maral explains how can we say Halal B'chol Yom? But so why is it so terrible to say Halal Stama Halal Badla every day? Only Halal B'chol Yom, because Chol Yom is supposed to celebrate the Bria. You're supposed to celebrate the Bria. You're supposed to celebrate the beauty of God and science. Okay, that we have to do every day. To celebrate miracles every day? No, that makes it cheap. No, we shouldn't be celebrating miracles every day, because our religion shouldn't be based on miracles, but should be based on understanding the hand of God in the natural phenomena. So this is a Litvish thing. Look at simple things. Don't look for fireworks. You can see the fireworks in the simple things. That's the honest truth. The more we understand Chachmas HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's Psukkah Zimra. And then we moved on to, we said Baruch Hashem HaMavarech, as you all know. Baruch Hashem HaMavarech, that's a Rebbeinu, that's a Tesi Yishonim in Yuma. That means Shem HaMafarech. Baruch Hashem HaMavarech, that means Shem HaMafarech. That's Yud Kei Vav Kei. The Kavanah there is not Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, but the Kavanah is a Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's a Tesi Yishonim in Yuma. So we understand that's why the Allah that's called the Kedusha. When you say Bochu, that's called the Kedusha. That's a gra found in Hilchos Tefillin that we take off Tefillin only after a Volitzia, and we don't wait for because we have what? You have X amount of Kedushas. What Kedushas do you have? You have the Kaddish of Kriya Shema. You have the Kaddish of the Kaddish of Kriya Shema. You have the Kaddish of Yeshma, let's number one. You have the Kaddish of Kedusha and Shemon Esrei, and you have the Kaddish of Mavolitzia. Those are three Kedushas. Three Kedushas you have, and that's enough. You have to have three Kedush, and the fourth one is Baruch. There you have it. So the Gemara said there's four Kedushas and three Kadeshim. Three Kadeshim, the last Kaddish is Kaddish Tiskabel. And beforehand, you have Chotzi Kaddish, and beforehand, you have Baita Chotzi Kaddish. The Eid Midrash Chanukah is not part of the deal. Okay, so basically, you have three Kaddishim and four Kedushas. The Gra, what means four Kedushas? It means those three Kedushas of Kaddish plus Baruch. Because what is it called a Kedusha? Because you're praising the Shem HaMafarech. When you say Yesh Mei Rabbah Mevarach, who are you talking? You're being mechaber to the Shmach of the Shem HaMafarech, not of Aleph Dal Nun Yud, but to create your kavanah should be when you say Am Yesh Mei Rabbah is Yud Kei Vav Kei. Kimavurim Targum Yonason, that when he springs by the brachas by Yechi, where he mentions over there that Yaakov Avinu said Baruch Shem K'vayid Malchus Elolam Vayid, he says Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Yolam Lo Leomaya. You'll see it over there in Targum Yonason and Parshas Vayechi. This week's Parshas, you should be able to see it there. So this is the idea of so Baruch was already. We're moving away from the God of science. We're moving to who's the God behind it. Literally. Now I know who he is. And now I see what he did. I see his business. But who is he? So I start talking about Mashiach HaMalachim and the Kedusha of Malachim. They want to know what's the source of this. Ayeh Mekoma Kavodo. Where's the source of all this covered Shemaim that I see in science? Where's it from? Mitaveh Dat Shem HaGadol. I'm quoting Lashon HaRambam. That's the sixth stage. And finally, you come to a conclusion, you make a major philosophical, and then what do you say? You say, what does that mean? Well, if you open up your Tur, the Tur says, because if you said, Amchadish B'tuvay B'chayam Torah Ma'aseh V'Reishis, Ka'amur, Lo Sorim Dolim Kilam Chador, O Chadosh Al Tzion Ta'ir, V'niskech Chulona Me'ira Lo Ro Baruch Atah Hashem Yotzer HaMa'orot. Goodness sakes, you were talking about the sun and the moon over there. What's this Or Chadash Tzion Ta'ir? What's that about? That's about the Or, as the Tur brings the name of the Ga'inim, but the Kavan is the Or of Sheshis of the Lamed Vav Shos that was the Shos for Adam Rishon, Shoyet Sofa, Misofa, Olam, Va'ad Sofa. Light here is a tool of enlightenment, the capability of being enlightened to be able to see the totality of Maisa HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as the Lashon HaRambam is in Perek Zayin Yesod HaTorah, Mi Tabo Oretz V'ad Tachas Kisei HaKavod. You see the total mass of God's Chachma. That's called Or HaGanuz, the Or of the Lamed Vav Shos. So what are you saying? So the Torah, the name of the Ga'inim, that's Or Chadash Tzion Torah. The sun is there for enlightenment. It's not just that phrase for you to be cognizant of the world and try to understand it. We pray that there will be another type of light, which with us will be much more cognizant and much more aware, and we will know it. So what's the next bracha? Avarabba. This is based on the Gemara. The Gemara says the Kadosh Baruch Hu was Gonez, the Or HaGanuz, and Eichan Ganzai, Batoira. Where is the Geniza? Where can he attach himself to that light, which will give you the capability of enlightenment of seeing the Tabur Ha'oretz Va'ad Kisei HaKavod? Again, I'm quoting Lashon HaRambam in Perek Zayin Yesod HaTorah. That's the way of seeing things, the total mass of information. Eichan Ganzai Batoira. So what do you have? You have a bracha of Avarabba, which is crying to God, begging him, please let me understand. Kol HaTorah Kula. That's what you're praying for, right? Kol divrei salmo tarasecha ba'ava v'harei neinu b'sarasecha v'bektibeinu b'mitzvaysecha. As we know, Taisus writes in Daf Yud Aleph Amid Beis and Brachas that you can be mekayim the mitzvah of Birchas HaTorah with that bracha. It brings you Yerushalmi. If you immediately learn something immediately right after davening, you're mekayim mitzvah Birchas HaTorah with that bracha of Avarabba. Because mitzvah Birchas HaTorah is not a Birchas HaMitzvah, it's a Birchas HaShvach, HaNismach L'Tefillah L'Limud HaTorah. Everybody knows that. You probably learned brachas one. That's what the halacha is. That's a bracha d'oraisa, according to the Bavli. Rishalmi argues, but that's a Bavli. So, Melamed, what do we have here? So what are we doing? We're trying to say we want to know God. Unbelievable. And we say, well, we'll learn, you'll know him. And then we make this declaration, yes, you know what? God is one. And then finally, after your tongue is white from the search of knowing who he is, you make this tremendous declaration. He's omnipotent and he's in pure oneness. Hashem Echad means he's Achdus Pshuta. As it's written in Pasuk Eliyahu, if you ever davened with Eidot HaMizrach, they start with Patach Eliyahu, also by Mincha and Shabbos. I happened to daven in the Sephardi Shul on Shabbos in Tveria, and they said Pasuk Eliyahu, Antu Chad v'lo b'chushban. You are one, but not the one of numbers. You're not the one of numbers. You're in pure oneness. It's called infinity, not mathematical infinity. That's weiter a number. No, Antuchat v'loy b'chushba. When you said Shema Yisrael Avaya Luken Avaya Echad, your kavanah shmit v'loy b'chushba, not the one of numbers. Doesn't mean you're one and we don't have a trinity. No, you are in pure oneness. You're Achdus Pshuta. That's what it means when you say Shema. Then you stand up in front of a God B'atzilus. But first, you can only stand in total bittul of self once you've understood that Antuchat v'loy b'chushba. Antuchat v'loy b'chushba means saying there's I and there's thou, but I understand that you're pure oneness and I'm nothing more than a creature. In other words, encountering God and realizing that I'm nothing more than created form, that is the kavanah you should be attaining through dealing with Shema. Afterwards, After you retain that, then you stand up and say, I don't even know what the I means anymore. And the Mea Shilach writes, the ultimate way of standing Shemini Esrei is V'ani Tfilasi. I become nothing more than my request. I have nothing else. Malchus, the less than Migar Me Klum, there's nothing left except the me, emanation of you, expressing dependency. But, you're not even looking for an answer. You're not even looking for a result, because that already stands in total opposite of what Shemini Esrei is supposed to be. So that's why you have it over here. That's why he said the Kriya Shema Shu Meyusha L'Fusha Adayin B'Bria. He's still in a sense of there's an I-thou relationship. Bria means bra, outside. Book Tani Lebra, teach it outside of the major base medrash. Okay, Bria, which is the idea of how am I supposed to think of Chachma and Bina of God when I'm still like I don't have a sense of self at all? He says, there's no way we can do it. But we still have a sense of I'm a created form, but that there's an I and a thou relationship. Well, then we understand I can sit. Then I can send. There's me, there's you, but I understand that actually, what is Chachma Bina mean of a Kadosh Baruch Hu? Then I can attain that idea. Lefisha adayin b'bria ki ein banu koyach l'ayra yichud ha'aba ve'ema b'yotenu ba'atzilus ach v'rak b'yotenu b'bria. And what's bria? Mimosh v'teichem. This is what's found in the Ari. When the Pasuk said mimosh v'teichem taviu lechem knufa mimosh v'teichem. It means when you're set. What does it mean? That is olam ha'bria, the meditation of I'm nothing more than a creature of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. When you have that sense of your ego is sat down. You're not standing. You're not a null. You're not a balga. You're not a yesh. Your yesh is kafuf. Moishvei seichem. Only then tani with knufa lechem Hashem. Then you can raise your chachma, which is chaluchu lachmu belachmi, which is chachma satayra. Then you can bring it up to its shorvish to Kadosh Baruch Hu. V'nei kodim she is bar ina yichud zochva nekeva. So he gave a little tamtis of what the Kriyas Chaim says. Now he's going to start explaining it. I gave you a little, art scroll. Now we're going to hear the real thing. So he says, Yesh lahagdim hara'achas. Before we start dealing with these things, la'afshita dvar migashmiutam. Before we start talking this language, we have to get used to abstract thought. When we use examples, see the examples is nothing more than mishalim, but you have to be able to try to comprehend the idea divorced from the mashal. To understand the chachma, for example, when I teach Gemara, whenever you take any mishnah you want, okay, the favorite mishnah I like to talk with mishnahs everybody know. First mishnah about Metzia. So you ask the person, what is the idea in this mishnah? So a little kid will tell me if two people fought over a Metzia and this guy says it's mine, this guy says no. That's the story. What's the idea? So they're going to tell me, Mama Musubi Yachlaiku. No, that's the rule. What's the idea? Still didn't get it. They start by telling me the story. Then they give me the ruling. I didn't ask you for the story. I asked for the idea. There's an idea here. You have to think conceptually. Okay, walk away from the forms. Idea. Okay, I'm not teaching Gemara here, but this is how I always start. What's the chachma here? Not the din, not the maisa. What's the chachma of Kadosh Baruch Hu here? That's what the Rebbe writes. That's the dveikus of Kadosh Baruch Hu by learning limud Torah be'iyun. He writes exactly. That's what iyun is. What's the idea? Connect to the chachma of Kadosh Baruch Hu, not to his rules. So he says we have to be mafshit hadvar megashmiyusa. You have to be able to literally take away the mashal, the parables from their material. Everyone knows you have to do that. There's a whole few chapters in Sefer HaPardes of the Ramak, Moshe Kodever, called Erche HaKinuyim. Where the different names of God. He's my master. He leads nations, tzvakos. He leads legions, and different things. Oh, he has a hand, the hand of God, the voice of God, the feet of God, Hashemayim kisi va'aretz hadom raglayim. Remember as a child, my father asked me, what do you see here? I said, I see that God's got long feet. You know what I mean? Because he sits in the heavens, he comes all the way down here. I hope they're not hairy. You know what I mean? That's a child. Lemais, you have to be mafshik nagashmis. That's a davar pashit. I call Moshe and Melitza. We have to be able to see these in their nothing more than examples or metaphors to an abstract idea. This has to be said before we do anything further. Whenever we talk about God in doing things or in describing God, we must look at Kochos Elokim. They are energies of God Himself. Why are they called this way? Why is this energy of God called ayin or regel? Lefi shehem makor, the makor. They are the source of the source. Li'isavus hadvarim agashmim sheba'olam hazeh shenikru al shmam kemo shekatav b'shalah. We once learned this inside. The Shalah writes that why is Lashon HaKodesh called Lashon HaKodesh? We all know what the Rambam writes. Rambam says because of a modest language. It doesn't have specific nouns describing the procreative organs. That's what the Rambam writes in the Nevuchim. The Ramban writes because somehow this is the language through which God created heaven and earth. That's what he actually writes. But the Shabbat gives it a much deeper understanding. It's probably what the Ramban meant. He says because these words do not describe the eye of a man. Ayin is a word which describes the koyach haloki, which is Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The marshal for that eye of Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the human eye or the animal's eye. The word ayin does not mean human eye or animal eye, and that someone reminds you of some trends, eye of God. No, it's the opposite. The word ayin means the eye of God, and that's the shirish umakar to that marshal in this world called the eye of a human being. So every time you see the eye of a human being, you say, when you speak Lashon HaKodesh, you're using words which describe not the marshal that we see in front of us, but actually the Shirish and Koychus Eloki. You are describing things through their metaphysical energies, not their material reality. If you understand Lashon HaKodesh, it's a frightening language. It's not just so talk Hebrew. No, when I say regel, I mean to say that koiches elyonim, which are called regulation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now go study it, and that is what I'm supposed to. That is the mucker of the human or the animal foot. That's why it's called Lashon HaKodesh. Is the language which describes the transcendent and not the mundane and not tangible. Lashon HaKodesh. It's a transcendent language, and this is what he writes in here. Shemukar de makar. They're the source of sources. For the coming into existence of these material realities, ba'olam hazeh, in the world that we are aware of, shenikrim al shmam, we are called here in this world ayin or regel or yad al shem of the ayin, regel and yad of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, k'moshe kasav hashalah. This is in the Agdama of the Shalah. You'll see it inside. There's quite a few Agdamas there. I think one is called Agdamas Beis Yisrael, if I'm not mistaken. It's the beginning of the Chelik of the Shalah. So Torah Shebiksav, the very beginning, the first volume. You'll find it there. It's a beautiful piece. I'm going to stop now, and we'll continue this next time around. Okay, we're here. We just finished with the Shalah. Bracha v'atzlacha. I hope you had a beautiful, meaningful Hanukkah. Now we can go all the way bis Pesach. Seid gebenched. Bracha v'atzlacha. Take care.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Rabbi.